Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis is a senior fellow at the policy group Defense Priorities. He's a former lieutenant colonel in the US Army who deployed into combat zones 4 times. He twice saw active service in Afghanistan and was awarded a Bronze Star Medal for service in Afghanistan in 2011. We can speak to him now. Good evening. Did the speed and the scale of the Taliban takeover come as a surprise to you?
I'll just tell you that the speed with which it happened did catch me a little bit off guard. I thought it would take a little bit longer, but not the outcome. I'll just say I could not more strongly disagree with the quote that you just had on there a second ago, that there was anything remotely close to a stalemate going on. This has been a consistent Taliban offensive that started in 2017, and it was a very methodical, slowly squeezing up, with starting off at small districts and then moving up larger, and then it took on a much larger, a much more rapid destruction of the Afghan military. Actually more like an implosion. It wasn't a destruction. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, when all of a sudden provinces started falling left and right, and then major cities. It's important to notice that these cities did not fall to the Taliban because of tough fighting or whatever. Almost all of them were negotiated settlements where the Afghan military surrendered, or they just turned and ran. And then the few times they did fight, they were decisively defeated. And what you have there is an absolute, complete repudiation of everything we've been trying to do for 20 years and claiming that we were succeeding at, when people knew all along, as I've been arguing since literally 2009, that this was doomed to failure. So an original question, yes, this was always doomed to failure. And if Biden had stayed with the 2,500, this would still have happened. It just might have taken a little bit longer.
So do you think the manner of withdrawal then could have happened any differently? Because, going by what you're saying, the withdrawal should have, in your opinion, it should have happened earlier.
Oh, absolutely. I argued as early as 2017, as recently as 2017, that we should announce the withdrawal, but then continue on at the same level of support for another 18 to 24 months, so that the withdrawal could be coordinated with all of our allies, that the Afghan people would have a chance to wrap their head around that, holy cow, we're going to now be responsible for all our security, and then slowly withdrawn. Still, it would have at least given the Afghan people a chance to catch their breath and maybe make some fundamental changes before they were responsible for everything. Unfortunately, what we did do was we just left pretty much within 3 or 4 months of the decision, and so that hastened the devastation that we're seeing now, but it didn't cause it. That was already built in.
So let me ask you this, and I appreciate this is going to be a question with a complex answer, I imagine. You seem to be saying that this was always doomed to fail, and you've known it was failing for many years. Why is that the case? We've heard so much about the level of resource. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about sacrifice, not only of Afghan lives, but of US military personnel, of British military personnel. We've spoken to some of them tonight. Why, in your view, did this fail?
There were 2 mutually reinforcing reasons. The first one, frankly, is that the U.S., after the original mission there in October 2001, after that was basically accomplished, that we had driven the Taliban from power and we had severely degraded al-Qaeda's ability to operate by March of 2002. By that time, that was an attainable mission and we accomplished it. We should have withdrawn shortly after that and turned it into a humanitarian assistance mission. But instead, what we did, Bush changed it to a nation-building mission. Obama then doubled down on it and made it even more so. And by doing that, what he did is he gave the U.S. military unattainable objectives. You can't build a nation with military power. So that was the first most fundamental problem. And then the second one, which we exacerbated, was that we were abjectly unwilling to acknowledge on the ground reality. Okay, you can try to do nation building, but when you see it's just not working at all, you can't tell the American people and our allies that it is working. And so we refused to acknowledge reality and just kept on lying about it, saying that it was working when we knew it wasn't working. And then the last part was the Afghan leaders themselves, both politically and militarily, were extraordinarily corrupt from day one. When we put, the Northern Alliance people in power, most of who stayed in some level of power all the way through until just a few days ago. And by turning a blind eye to all their corruption, we've known about this for years, but we did nothing about it. And so what happened is they focused on providing themselves with money and power at the expense of building an effective security system, security force. So this is what it just literally fell apart because they never invested in what needed to be. So all those three things combined made this impossible to win.
I mean, that is a very bleak assessment. You'll be aware of this. In the US and certainly in the UK, I think actually probably to a greater extent, there was very vocal opposition to the original invasion of Afghanistan. And over weeks and months and years, the justification for going into Afghanistan, as you stated, it shifted. So it started off being about justice following the attacks on US soil in 2001. It then turned into a thing about human rights, about the treatment of women, about the abhorrent behavior of the Taliban, doing disgraceful, disgusting things like beheading people in football fields, having no respect for the concept of human rights. Now, if you focus on that second set of justifications, do you think it is fair to say that the US and the UK, once they were in there, they did have a responsibility to make this work no matter what?
No, I don't. In fact, I think the opposite. I think they had an obligation and a responsibility to recognize the limits of military power and to not try to attain the unattainable just because that's something we want to do. We have shown that you can have all the right motives and the right desires that we want to accomplish. We want to help them with this. But the fact is you can't do it. And so to continue to try decade after decade and continue to lie about it and saying that you were making progress when all you were doing is just providing the illusion of success so that at some point reality was going to impose itself. And now then all those things have been lost anyway. So we didn't accomplish those things and we lied about it. And God only knows how many more people are dead today than should have been.
Let me put this to you. The Taliban put out a statement very recently, just I think in the past couple of hours, actually. They were speaking to Al Jazeera, and the Taliban spokesperson said, "We don't think foreign forces will repeat their failed experience in Afghanistan again." Doesn't that feel like they're pushing the faces of the US and the UK, and particularly all those people that made sacrifices, they're pushing their faces into that failure and saying, yeah, you're not going to try this again?
I don't think there's any doubt about that because, look at it from their point of view. They were driven out of power in a crushing defeat between October 2001 and March 2002, and they were annihilated. I don't mean they were defeated; they were wiped out. There didn't even exist a Taliban government or military. They were all dispersed or killed. After that, they then withstood all of the onslaught of NATO and the United States through the surge of the 2010-2012 period. All the changes of strategies between that and everything that we tried. Trump, tried to ramp up the military air power and had 6,000 on average military airstrikes per year from 2018 to 2019 before making the deal in 2020. And none of it even slowed down the Taliban. So now then they have won and they're thinking, hey, we've done it to the British twice. We did it to the Soviet Union and now to the United States. And at some point it does make sense to say, hey, why do we keep trying the unattainable? From their perspective, it's obviously, a little bit of grandstanding, but unfortunately, there's not much we can say in return, frankly.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. That was Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis.